There comes a moment in a woman's life when she begins to feel a quiet pull within her soul. Not the kind that screams or demands immediate attention, but a soft, consistent whisper that something deeper inside her wants to awaken. It doesn't start with loud announcements or outward transformation. It begins in the unseen, the internal, the energetic realm of who she is when no one is watching. According to Carl Jung, the process of becoming begins the moment a woman turns inward, when she stops trying to be chosen and begins to choose herself. That's the moment everything shifts, when she no longer performs but simply becomes. And in that becoming, she stirs something ancient in the hearts of those around her. You see, most people chase after the external. They believe if they look a certain way, dress a certain way, speak a certain way, they will be loved, desired, chosen. But Jung's wisdom reminds us that true transformation begins not with the outer mask, but with the inner self. The self that is unafraid to meet her own shadows. The self that learns to love the parts of her that were once hidden. The woman everyone wants is not the one trying to please everyone. She is the one who is at peace with herself. She is magnetic because her energy is whole. She is radiant because her spirit is real. And this shift, this inner shift, is not something you buy. It is something you become. The first shift begins when a woman stops abandoning herself for love. It is so easy to lose yourself in the desire to be wanted, to make yourself smaller so someone else can feel bigger, to say yes when your soul whispers no, to silence your truth to keep peace. But the woman who turns inward realizes that true love never demands her disappearance. She recognizes that her presence is sacred, and if someone asks her to dim her light, they were never meant to stand beside her brilliance. This shift is not loud, it's not angry. It's quiet strength. It's the quiet, knowing that being alone and whole is far more powerful than being together and hollow. And when she embodies this, something magical happens. People begin to feel the integrity in her presence. Her boundaries aren't walls. They're invitations to meet her in truth. The second shift is when she starts listening to her body, her intuition, her emotional signals. In Jungian psychology, the body is a vessel of the unconscious. It speaks in sensations, in whispers, in feelings that don't always have words. Most people are disconnected from these signals, numbing, distracting, pretending. But a woman who is becoming learns to pause. She learns that if her body feels tight, her soul might be resisting something false. If her stomach knots up before she walks into a room, maybe her energy is telling her a truth her mind can't yet name. She learns to stop overriding these signals. She begins to trust her instincts, to hear the wisdom in her own stillness. And this trust makes her luminous. She no longer needs validation. Her body becomes her compass. Her emotions become her language. She walks into a space not asking, will they like me? But wondering, does this space honor me? And that question alone changes everything. The third shift is when she stops chasing and begins attracting. Not from ego, not from strategy, but from alignment. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. A woman who is not aware of her patterns will keep repeating them, wondering why she's always drawn to the unavailable, the distant, the unready. But a woman who becomes conscious, who integrates her shadows, begins to attract from her wholeness, not her wounds. She no longer moves from lack but from overflow. She is no longer seeking to be chosen, because she has already chosen herself. And when a woman stands in this kind of energy, she becomes rare, not because she is trying to be different, but because she is finally being real. Her vibration speaks louder than her words, and the people meant for her feel it instantly. The fourth shift is when she learns the art of stillness. In a world that glorifies hustle, performance, and urgency, stillness becomes a rebellion, not laziness, not apathy, but the kind of stillness that comes from inner security. She does not rush to respond. She does not panic to fill silence. She knows that her value is not in how much she does, but in how deeply she is. Her stillness makes others feel safe, seen, softened. Jung believed that the feminine archetype carries within it the power to transform through presence alone. This is not a doing energy, it is a being energy. And when a woman embodies this, the world adjusts to her rhythm. Men speak slower around her, people listen deeper. Rooms shift when she walks in, not because she demands it, but because her calm invites authenticity. And this stillness makes her unforgettable. The fifth and final shift is when she stops fearing her own depth. There is a part of every woman that feels deeply, thinks profoundly, desires intensely. And for so long, many have been told that they are too much, too emotional, too complicated, too intense. But the woman who is becoming learns that her depth is not a flaw. It is her superpower. She does not water herself down to be digestible. She allows herself to feel, to question, to yearn, to grow. She is not afraid to cry, to rage, to rejoice. She sees emotion not as weakness but as intelligence. Jung would say this is the anima fully alive, the feminine essence that brings color to life, meaning to existence. And when she owns this depth, she no longer hides from love. She lets it find her in her fullness, not in fragments. She no longer tiptoes through life. She dances, she creates, she surrenders, she leads. And in doing so, she becomes the kind of woman the world remembers long after she has left the room. What makes a woman truly desired is not perfection. It is not beauty in the conventional sense. It is presence. It is emotional honesty. It is energetic clarity. It is soul. The woman everyone wants is not the one who tries to be everything to everyone. She is the one who dares to be herself, fully, freely, fiercely. She is the one who is unafraid to lose people who are not aligned with her truth, because she knows that what is real will never require her betrayal of self. And so she rises, not in noise, but in grace. She ascends, not to impress, but to embody. She evolves, not for applause, but for alignment. And when she walks, the earth remembers her steps. When she speaks, people listen without knowing why. When she loves, it is with a purity that shakes souls awake. This is the woman everyone wants, not because she conforms, but because she is the mirror through which others see their own truth. Her energy heals, her silence teaches, her love liberates. She is the embodiment of Jung's deepest truths, that only by integrating all of ourselves, the light and the shadow, can we become whole. And when a woman becomes whole, she becomes holy. She becomes home. Let this be your reminder that the journey inward is not a detour. It is the destination. And in that sacred return to self, you become more than wanted. You become unforgettable, beautiful. Let's continue seamlessly in the same emotional tone, staying deeply connected to the poetic rhythm, soft emotional intensity, and Carl Jung's psychological depth. This continuation will keep the same style, no headings, only slight word changes, and maintain a total character count that exceeds 18,000. Here is the next part of the speech. There is a kind of woman whose presence lingers long after she leaves. Not because she tried to leave a mark, but because she carried something real. Something you don't forget. A feeling more than a look. A sense more than an image. She isn't loud in her beauty, but her essence hums through the air like a melody you didn't know your soul remembered. People feel it, without understanding why. Her energy speaks in languages that words can't reach. And this isn't something she performs. It is something she becomes when she returns to herself. when she no longer runs from her truth, but walks hand in hand with it. When she stops seeking mirrors in other people, and instead becomes the mirror herself. She is not what the world told her to be. She no longer carries the need to be palatable. She doesn't twist herself into shapes just to fit in. She no longer over-explains, overgives, or overstays. Her life is no longer built around the idea of being liked. It is built around the truth of being free, and this freedom gives birth to a beauty that cannot be faked, a glow that cannot be copied, a gravity that cannot be resisted. It's not just how she looks, it's how she sees, how she listens, how she holds space. She has learned to sit with discomfort, to lean into the quiet, to dance with her shadows without letting them define her. This is the woman who has died many small deaths. She has let go of who she once thought she had to be. She has buried the parts of her that were built from fear, from performance, from needing to belong. She has let them fall away, one by one, until what remains is real, pure, solid. She has cried in silence and healed in solitude. She has had nights where the ache in her chest felt unbearable, and still she rose. Still she loved. Still she chose light. Not because it was easy, but because it was true. There is no pretending in her. She will not lie to feel accepted. She will not play roles to feel safe. She has learned that her truth is not too much, that her emotions are not a burden, that her soul does not have to shrink in the presence of others. And the moment she believed that, everything changed. The way she speaks now is slower, more deliberate. She no longer tries to fill silence with noise. She lets pauses breathe. She lets conversations go deeper. She looks into people, not at them. And when she loves from a place of wholeness. Not from need, not from lack, but from fullness. She no longer needs someone to complete her. She has become the home she was searching for, and in doing so, she becomes the woman people feel safe around, drawn to, changed by. She doesn't need to chase. She doesn't need to convince. She simply lives in alignment, and alignment is louder than words. Jung said that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a part of the self, but by integration. And she has learned to integrate the soft with the strong, the light with the dark, the calm with the storm. She no longer fears contradiction. She can be wild and grounded, fierce and gentle, playful and deep. She no longer chooses between being soft or strong. She is both. And that duality is part of her magic. She can hold you in silence and still make you feel understood. She can walk into a room without saying a word and still change the frequency. Because her energy is not chaotic. It's clear, it's calm, it's intentional. She doesn't need to prove herself. She simply allows herself. And when others meet her, they feel something. Not just attraction, but awakening. Her presence stirs something buried. Her honesty pulls others into their own. She does not try to teach, yet she teaches by being. She doesn't need to persuade, yet her truth is persuasive. She lives with depth, and so she attracts depth. Surface things do not hold her attention anymore. Small talk drains her. Games bore her. She wants real. She wants raw. She wants connection that moves through the skin and into the soul. This is the energy people crave without realizing it. The kind of presence that nourishes, not depletes. That invites, not demands. That sees without judgment. It's not something she learned. It's something she uncovered by letting go of everything she was not. By peeling back the layers of performance and finding the truth underneath. And the truth is this: she was always powerful. She just had to remember. She had to stop looking outward for permission. She had to stop waiting for someone to see her and start seeing herself. She had to turn toward the parts of her she was told to hide. The messy parts, the emotional parts, the wild parts, and she had to love them. That love changed her. Not the kind that comes from romance, but the kind that comes from finally choosing herself. From realizing that her worth was never negotiable, that her existence is not something to apologize for. And in this becoming, she no longer fears loss. She knows that what is meant for her will feel nourishing, not confusing. She knows that her peace is too expensive to trade for crumbs, that her time is too sacred to waste on things that do not see her. She knows that her heart is not a convenience, but a sanctuary. And the people who are meant to be there will feel that. They won't want to exploit her softness. They will protect it. They won't be afraid of her depth. They will meet her there. This is what makes her rare. Not her looks, not her style, not her status, but her energy, her truth, her self-possession, the way she walks in full ownership of her soul, the way she radiates without trying, the way she loves without losing herself. She becomes the kind of woman who doesn't beg to be chosen, because she understands something deeper now. She is the choice. And not everyone is ready for that. Not everyone is ready for the kind of woman who sees through masks, who hears what's not being said, who loves without condition but with discernment. She is not for those who want easy. She is for those who are willing to grow, willing to meet her in truth, willing to rise. Because this kind of woman does not stay where she is not seen. She does not chase what runs. She does not prove her worth to those who cannot see it. She knows that her energy is sacred, her presence is powerful, and her love is transformative. She doesn't just want connection. She becomes connection. She doesn't just want truth. She speaks it, lives it, breathes it. And so she walks through life with an aura that cannot be explained. You don't just see her, you feel her. Her silence is loud. Her gaze is soft but deep. Her laughter is honest. Her sorrow is holy. She carries the wisdom of all she's survived, and she wears it like a crown, not to impress, but to remind herself that she made it, that she rose, that she became. This is the power of the woman who turned inward, the woman who did not run from herself, but ran toward her soul. The woman who made the inner shifts that changed everything. She is not perfect. She is not always certain. But she is real. And in a world full of illusions, that is the most attractive thing of all. She knows now that her value isn't tied to how much she gives away. Her worth isn't determined by how much of herself she sacrifices to be accepted. She's done performing for love, done bending for approval, done proving that she's enough. She simply is. She no longer tries to fit into spaces where her soul feels small. She no longer tries to be digestible for those who only know how to taste sweetness, not substance. She walks away, not in anger, but in peace. Because peace is her standard now. Her silence is not withdrawal, it is protection. A soft shield around her sacred self. If something costs her peace, it's too expensive. If someone can't meet her in the truth, they can't meet her at all. And this choice to honor herself over and over again has changed the way she moves through life. She no longer rushes. She no longer explains. She no longer waits for someone to see her. She sees herself, fully, tenderly, unapologetically. She is her own witness now, her own safe place. And in that self-recognition, she becomes free. Not the kind of freedom that escapes responsibility, but the kind that embraces truth, no matter how inconvenient. She does not run from discomfort. She faces it. She does not numb her emotions. She learns from them. And the more she honors her inner world, the more magnetic her outer world becomes. People often wonder what it is about her, why their hearts stir when she speaks, why they feel understood even in her silence. It is not something she does, it is something she is. She is aligned. She is whole. She has stepped into the archetype Jung described. Not a mask, but the essence beneath the mask. The anima in full expression. The feminine that doesn't need to dominate to be powerful, nor shrink to be lovable. She simply is, and that is enough. She knows now that her desires are divine, that her dreams are sacred maps, not foolish distractions. She no longer needs permission to want what she wants. She no longer waters down her vision to avoid intimidating others. She no longer fears outgrowing people, places, or versions of herself. Growth is no longer a threat, it's a promise. She allows herself to rise, even if it means letting go. She allows herself to expand, even if it means being misunderstood. She allows herself to want more, even if others settle for less. Because she understands something that many forget. The life she envisions is not a fantasy. It is a mirror of what she is capable of becoming if she dares to trust herself. She trusts now, even in uncertainty, even in transition, even in heartbreak. She trusts that what breaks her open is also what sets her free. She knows that healing is not linear and growth is not always pretty. But she shows up anyway. She breathes through the hard days. She softens through the chaos. She holds herself in the quiet spaces where no one else sees. And this inner strength, this radical self-devotion, this capacity to hold space for her own becoming. It is this that makes her unforgettable. She no longer lives in reaction. She responds with awareness. She pauses before she speaks. She chooses peace over performance. She doesn't need to win every argument because she's no longer trying to prove her power. Her power is in her presence, not her defense. Her calm speaks volumes. Her patience is deliberate. Her walk is steady. Her energy doesn't chase, it draws in. What she needs, she doesn't beg for. She attracts it because she has become it. The world watches her, but she doesn't move for the gaze of the world. She dances for the rhythm of her own soul. She no longer lives on borrowed timelines or broken promises. She creates her own path. And it's not always clear, not always easy, but it is hers. And that is what makes her unshakable. Her roots are deep now, grown through pain, strengthened through solitude, nourished through grace. She doesn't rise fast, but she rises true. And when she blooms, it is not for applause, it is for light, for truth, for herself. She is the woman Jung described when he spoke of individuation. The process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. She has walked through her inner darkness. She has met her fears, her patterns, her illusions. And instead of running, she listened. She learned. She integrated. She alchemized the pain into power, the confusion into clarity, the rejection into redirection. And now she lives from her center, not from fear, not from need, but from grounded, rooted truth. She becomes the woman others feel safe around because she is safe within herself. She doesn't project. She reflects. She doesn't blame. She becomes aware. She doesn't fight for control. She embodies trust. And in this energy, people soften. Men feel seen in ways they didn't know they needed. Women feel inspired to return to themselves. Children feel calm in her presence. Even animals are drawn to her stillness. Because her energy is not scattered. It is sacred. She has nothing to prove now. Her life is not a stage. It is a temple. Her love is not a performance. It is a prayer. She gives, but not to be needed. She receives, but not from entitlement. She moves with reciprocity, with grace, with discernment. She knows the difference between attention and devotion, between chemistry and alignment, between temporary attraction and soul recognition, and she chooses accordingly. This kind of woman changes everything she touches, not because she forces change, but because she embodies it. She does not fix others. She invites them to rise. She does not chase healing in others. She becomes the healing within herself, and in this embodiment, she awakens something ancient in those around her. something honest, something holy, something real. And when you meet her, you feel it. She is not the loudest in the room. She doesn't need to be. Her energy does the speaking. Her alignment does the drawing in. Her essence does the remembering. Because you don't just see her, you remember her. From somewhere beyond words. From some place deep in your soul that recognizes truth when it stands in front of you. That is the woman who made the 5 inner shifts. The woman who chose herself. Who walked away from everything that wasn't aligned. Who sat in the fire of her own becoming and let it burn away everything false. She is not perfect, but she is real. And in this world, that is the rarest beauty of all. She is not perfect, but she is real. And in this world, that is the rarest beauty of all. The world has been so used to noise, performance, and surfaces that when someone walks in with depth, presence, and stillness, it stirs something raw and unspoken. She doesn't need to entertain. She doesn't need to convince. Her very being reminds people of what they forgot they needed. That something can be beautiful without being loud. That someone can be soft without being weak. That the most powerful energy in the room isn't always the most visible, but the one that is most rooted. She no longer seeks the spotlight. She becomes the light, not because she tries, but because she has cleared everything within her that once blocked her own radiance. She no longer hides from herself. She has walked through her own wilderness and found peace in the wild. She has kissed her wounds and turned them into wisdom. The parts of her that once felt like burdens have become her most sacred teachers. She no longer seeks to be saved. She is her own sanctuary. She no longer looks for someone to complete her. She has completed herself. And from that place of fullness, she gives. But she does not lose herself in the giving. She opens her heart, but she no longer hands over the key. She shares her world, but only with those who know how to honor it. Because her time, her presence, her energy, it is not random, it is refined. And not everyone gets access to it anymore. This is not arrogance. This is clarity. She knows now that not all connections are meant to stay. Some were only meant to awaken her, to shake her, to remind her. And when their time is done, she does not cling. She releases. Not from bitterness, but from wisdom. She has learned the art of letting go with grace. She no longer fears endings, because she knows now that every ending births a new beginning. She does not beg to stay where she is not met. She does not force what is not flowing. She trusts the unfolding. She trusts the pauses. She trusts the divine timing of things. Because she trusts herself. She is not guarded, but she is intentional. She is not closed, but she is selective. She knows that her peace is not up for negotiation. Her joy is not something she outsources. Her validation is not something she chases. She does not shrink to be loved. She expands to be free. And in that freedom, she becomes love. Not the kind that consumes or controls, but the kind that liberates. The kind that says, "Come as you are, but don't ask me to abandon who I've become." She no longer over-explains her worth. She no longer waters down her truth. She no longer justifies her boundaries. She has learned that what aligns will never require her to disconnect from herself. What's real will not feel like confusion. It will feel like clarity. What's right will not exhaust her spirit. It will breathe life into it. So she waits. She watches. She listens, not with fear, but with wisdom. Because her life is no longer about fitting in. It's about aligning. And if that means fewer people, so be it. If that means more solitude, she welcomes it. Because she is no longer afraid of being alone. She is afraid of betraying herself. That fear used to live deep in her. This fear of being too much or not enough. But now, she no longer shapes herself to avoid discomfort. She stands in her truth, even when her voice shakes. She speaks even when silence feels easier. She honors her feelings, even when they don't make sense to others. Because her inner world is her compass now. Her intuition is not a mystery, it's her guide. Her emotions are not obstacles, they are messengers. She reads them with reverence, not resistance. And in doing so, she becomes impossible to manipulate because no one can sway a woman who is anchored in herself. There is a softness in her now, but it is not weakness. It is the softness of someone who no longer needs to guard her heart with armor. It is the softness of someone who has made peace with her past. It is the softness of someone who knows she can bend without breaking. Her softness is strength that has learned how to surrender, and her strength is softness that has learned how to endure. This is the woman who knows herself, not because someone else told her who she is, but because she dared to find out. She dug through the stories. She peeled back the layers. She faced the discomfort. And in that honest confrontation with herself, she rose. Not above others, but deeper into herself. She is not ahead. She is aligned. She is not better, she is becoming. She is not trying, she is being. And this energy, this rare, untamed, grounded energy, it doesn't just attract love. It attracts truth. It attracts peace. It attracts clarity. She doesn't just attract people. She attracts experiences that match the vibration she lives in. Because she has become the embodiment of what she once prayed for. She used to look outside and ask the world to bring her love, to bring her peace, to bring her home. But now, she brings those things with her wherever she goes. She carries them, she creates them, she is them, and in doing so, she becomes unforgettable, not because she asks to be remembered, but because she showed people what it means to be real in a world full of pretending. She showed them what it looks like to stay soft in a world that tries to harden you, what it looks like to stay open in a world that teaches you to close. What it looks like to stay rooted in truth, even when it's uncomfortable. She doesn't just leave impressions, she leaves imprints. She doesn't just make an entrance, she makes an impact. Because everything about her is intentional. Everything she gives is honest. Everything she is aligned. Because everything about her is intentional. Everything she gives is honest. Everything she is aligned. And that kind of alignment cannot be faked. It is felt deeply, instantly, quietly. The moment you meet her, something inside you settles. Not because she fills a void, but because she reminds you of your own soul. She doesn't make you depend on her. She makes you remember yourself. She doesn't overpower. She doesn't demand. She holds space. She listens with her eyes. She speaks from a place that doesn't need to be louder to be heard. Her silence says more than most people's words. Her energy makes noise without ever raising her voice. She does not take the spotlight. She becomes the glow that makes everything else more visible. This is the energy of a woman who no longer asks the world for permission. She has outgrown the need for external approval. She has made peace with the fact that not everyone will understand her, and that is okay. She does not shift anymore to be understood. She does not simplify her soul just to make others comfortable. She does not slow down her growth just to be relatable. She knows that her becoming is not a threat to anyone, but she also knows that not everyone will be ready for it. And still she grows. Still she expands. Still she rises, not in arrogance, but in obedience to the truth inside her. She lives with a sense of devotion now, not to people, not to outcomes, but to alignment, to clarity, to the whisper of her intuition that has never led her astray. She doesn't rush through life anymore. She moves with reverence, with ritual, with meaning. Even the way she pours her coffee, the way she touches a book, the way she looks at the sky, there's presence. There's sacredness, because she's learned to slow down enough to feel. She's learned that life is not something you conquer. It's something you come home to, moment by moment, breath by breath. And this presence she carries, it is not just beautiful. It is healing. People find themselves softening around her, not because she tells them to, but because her energy makes it safe to do so. She is not interested in power over others. She is interested in power within herself. She is not here to compete. She is here to create, to inspire, to ignite, to reflect what is possible when you stop trying to be loved and start becoming love. When you stop chasing and start becoming. When you stop surviving and start remembering that you were always meant to thrive. She does not live in fear anymore. Not the fear of losing someone. Not the fear of missing out. Not the fear of rejection. She knows now that anything real cannot be lost. Anything aligned cannot be taken. Anything meant for her will find her, not because she waits, but because she walks in truth. She no longer shrinks when others can't meet her depth. She no longer lowers her frequency to be heard by those who refuse to listen. She no longer trades her fire for someone else's comfort. She has become the kind of woman who doesn't need to be louder to be felt. Her presence speaks before her mouth does. Her truth is undeniable, even in silence. And perhaps the most sacred part of her evolution is this: she no longer clings, not to titles, not to expectations, not to people. She has learned to hold everything with open hands, to love without attachment, to give without agenda, to feel deeply without losing herself in the feeling. She has learned that letting go is not the same as giving up, that surrender is not the same as weakness. She knows now that the more she releases, the more room she makes for what is real. And so she lets life flow. She lets people come and go. She honors the cycles, the seasons, the sacred timing of it all. She doesn't live in a hurry anymore. She doesn't need to arrive anywhere to be whole. She knows now that the journey is not a straight line. It's a spiral, and every time she returns to a familiar lesson, she meets it from a deeper place, a wiser place, a gentler place, because healing is not about perfection. It's about wholeness. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And she remembers now. Every step she takes is a return. Every breath is a prayer. Every day, she becomes more of herself, not more of what the world wants, more of what her soul needs. She knows now that her presence is not for everyone, that her depth will feel overwhelming to those who only know how to swim in the shallow, that her softness will confuse those who only respond to chaos, that her stillness will unsettle those who thrive on noise. And she's okay with that, because she no longer needs to be liked by everyone. She needs to be at peace with herself. She no longer needs to be invited into every room. She only enters where her presence is honored. She only pours where her energy is reciprocated. She only stays where love feels like truth, not tension. This is what makes her unforgettable. She is not the woman who leaves you breathless because of her beauty. She is the one who leaves you speechless because of her energy. The kind that stays with you long after she's gone. The kind that echoes in your memory. The kind that changes the way you look at others. She is the one who doesn't just pass through your life. She awakens you. Not by trying, but by being. Not by reaching, but by standing still in her own truth. She is rare, not because she tries to be, but because she dared to unbecome everything she was not. She shed every layer that wasn't hers, every belief that didn't serve her, every mask she was taught to wear. She faced herself, and she found freedom in that mirror, the kind of freedom that doesn't scream, the kind that whispers, "This is who I am." And that is everything. Because there's something about a woman who no longer needs to be noticed to feel worthy. She walks into a room, and the room subtly reshapes around her presence, not because she demands it, but because her energy is so rooted in quiet certainty. She's not performing for validation. She's not hoping to be chosen. She knows that she is already whole, and that knowing, deep in her bones, changes how people respond to her. The man who once overlooked her now feels a strange pull, a kind of invisible tether that he can't explain. It's not her body, her words, or even her smile. It's the way she's no longer seeking anything from him. Her detachment is not coldness, it's sacred power. She doesn't manipulate, doesn't try to charm, doesn't chase. And that, ironically, becomes the very reason people chase her. She becomes unforgettable not by force, but by being fully herself, undiluted, unafraid, and unattached to the outcome. Men, especially, sense when a woman is no longer willing to contort herself for love. They feel it in her silence, in her pause, in her unwavering gaze. She doesn't argue to prove her worth. She doesn't text to remind him of her value. She lets him feel the space she leaves behind when she stops trying. And in that space, he encounters himself. He sees the games he played, the opportunities he missed, the depth he wasn't ready to hold. She's not punishing him, she's just evolved. And that evolution doesn't leave room for confusion, inconsistency, or crumbs. It invites a higher kind of presence, a presence rooted in emotional clarity, in deep integrity, in vibrational truth. Carl Jung said that people don't see things as they are, they see things as they are. When a woman changes within, the world reflects that back. She no longer attracts men who want to fix her, control her, or use her as a mirror for their insecurity. She begins to draw in those who recognize her light, not because it entertains them, but because it awakens something real inside them. And the difference between being admired and being truly seen becomes everything, because admiration is about surface, being seen is about soul, and once a woman is seen, truly seen, there's no going back. Not for her, not for him, not for anyone who's tasted that depth. And it all began with a shift so invisible, so internal, so sacred, it could only be called a return to her truth. And once she returns to her truth, something irreversible happens. She no longer seeks shelter in someone else's love, because she's built a home within herself. Her joy is no longer dependent on someone else's presence. Her radiance doesn't dim when someone fails to recognize it. She has tasted the kind of peace that comes from deep alignment, and now, anything that disrupts that peace simply loses its appeal. She doesn't resist life, she flows with it. She doesn't try to control others, she holds herself. She doesn't try to explain her worth, she lives it, breathes it, becomes it. That's what makes her magnetic. Not because she's trying to be, but because she's completely stopped trying. Her relationships start to shift too. The men who once thrived on her uncertainty now find no place to cling. She doesn't offer emotional chaos for them to fix. She doesn't over-explain or over-give or over-function. She meets energy where it's at, and if it's not meeting her in clarity, it falls away naturally. There's no drama, there's no emotional chase, there's just a clean boundary held with softness and strength. That kind of boundary isn't loud, it doesn't need to be, it's felt, it's respected, and for the man who is ready, it becomes an invitation to rise, to deepen, to match the frequency she now lives on. She starts to notice that the same qualities she once thought were too much are now her greatest gifts. Her sensitivity, once a burden, becomes a compass. Her emotions, once suppressed, become her wisdom. Her ability to love deeply, once misused, becomes sacred ground. She no longer hides these parts of herself to make others comfortable. She honors them, because in honoring them, she honors life. And when a woman honors her own essence, the right people are drawn to her not out of need, but out of reverence. This is the woman who no longer waits. She no longer waits to be chosen, to be saved, to be told she is enough. She knows she already is. She doesn't wait for closure to let go. She doesn't wait for someone else to change to grow. She doesn't wait for the apology that may never come. She chooses herself, over and over, gently but firmly. And in that choosing, she creates a field of energy so strong that it rearranges who and what can enter her life. Not because she's guarded, but because she's clear. This clarity doesn't come from books or affirmations or strategies. It comes from experience, from heartbreak, from silence. From the moments she sat with herself and realized that no one was coming to do the inner work for her. So she stopped running. She faced the parts of her that once terrified her. And instead of rejecting them, she welcomed them. She mothered her wounds, reparented her fears, and held space for her grief. That is how she became powerful, not by avoiding her shadows, but by walking through them with compassion. And now she walks differently. She speaks differently. She loves differently. She understands that not everyone is meant to hold her. And that's okay, because she is no longer seeking to be held by just anyone. She is only available to what mirrors her evolution. She's not available for potential. She's not available for confusion. She's not available for half love. Her soul has upgraded, and her life reflects that. Would you like me to continue into the next shift from here? And once she returns to that truth, everything else begins to fall into place. Not because she's chasing it, but because she's aligned with something greater than external desire. She no longer performs love like a role to be played. She embodies it. She no longer begs the universe to give her someone who sees her. She becomes someone who sees herself so deeply that it naturally magnetizes others who can meet her there. There's no longer fear in solitude. In fact, solitude becomes her sacred space, because in that space, she hears her own voice again. She remembers what it feels like to be guided by intuition instead of insecurity. She rediscovers her softness, not as weakness, but as power that doesn't need to shout to be heard. That shift is quiet, but its effect is seismic. She no longer feels the need to over-explain herself. She no longer overextends. She doesn't try to make broken connections whole. She stops translating her worth through someone else's ability to stay. And it changes the kind of love she entertains. She starts to recognize when someone comes into her life with the same grounded energy she now carries. She feels it in their tone, in their stillness, in the absence of chaos. She no longer confuses intensity with intimacy. She no longer tolerates passion that comes with pain. She now knows the difference between someone who wants to possess her and someone who wants to witness her. And because of this, the people who are not meant for her begin to fall away. Not with drama, but with clarity. She doesn't need to destroy them on the way out. She simply releases them. She trusts that what's not aligned will dissolve, and what is meant will remain. Not because she is passive, but because she has stepped into her feminine intelligence, where flow meets discernment. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious drives much of human behavior, but when a woman becomes conscious of her wounds, of her patterns, of her projections, she stops playing out old stories. She stops trying to earn love that should have been given freely. She stops bleeding for those who refuse to heal themselves. Instead, she becomes a space where love can actually grow. Not fantasy love, not conditional love, but the kind of love that has weight, truth, and spiritual gravity. The kind that doesn't need to be chased or begged for. the kind that meets her with open eyes and open hands. And this love only appears once she's made those 5 inner shifts. Once she's chosen her peace over potential, her clarity over confusion, her soul over superficial flattery. That is when everything changes. Not instantly, not always visibly, but deeply and permanently.